One of the things I like to do when I finish a book that I loved is ask myself, what does this book do better than any other book that I've read? It's sort of like an exercise in extreme compression. It's like trying to sum up the entire book in less than a sentence. And so for me, when it comes to Moby Dick, the answer would be atmosphere. Melville does incredible things with atmosphere in this book. And we get a sense of that very, very early on. In chapter 4, which is these early chapters, when Ishmael is still on land, there's a scene where Ishmael is sharing a bed with this character, Quake, who he doesn't know yet, who's a cannibal and a heathen. And he wakes up in the morning and Quake's arm is thrown over him. And Ishmael tries to describe to us what that feeling was like, what it was like waking up in the embrace of this stranger. Quote, "My sensations were strange. Let me try to explain them. When I was a child, I well remember a somewhat similar circumstance that befell me. Whether it was a reality or a dream, I never could entirely settle." End quote. And so first of all, this is one of these moments in Moby Dick where we go out of time, where we go to a story within a story. And there are a few of these, and they're all fascinating. And two, I love this description, whether it was reality or a dream, I never could entirely settle. Because a lot of what happens on the ship has that feeling of hovering between reality and dream. Quote, "The circumstance was this. I had been cutting up some caper or other. I think it was trying to crawl up the chimney, as I had seen a little sweep do a few days previous. And my stepmother, who somehow or other was all the time whipping me, or sending me to bed supperless, my mother dragged me by the legs out of the chimney and packed me off to bed, though it was only 2 o'clock in the afternoon of the 21st June, the longest day in the year in our hemisphere. I felt dreadfully, but there was no help for it, so upstairs I went to my little room in the 3rd floor, undressed myself as slowly as possible so as to kill time, and with a bitter sigh got between the sheets. I lay there dismally calculating that 16 entire hours must elapse before I could hope for a resurrection. 16 hours in bed. The small of my back ached to think of it. And it was so light too, the sun shining in at the window, and a great rattling of coaches in the streets, and the sound of gay voices all over the house. I felt worse and worse. For several hours I lay there, broad awake, feeling a great deal worse than I have ever done since, even from the greatest subsequent misfortunes. At last I must have fallen into a troubled nightmare of a doze, and slowly waking from it, half steeped in dreams, I opened my eyes, and the before sunlit room was now wrapped in outer darkness. Instantly I felt a shock running through all my frame. Nothing was to be seen, and nothing was to be heard, but a supernatural hand seemed placed in mine. My arm hung over the counterpane, and the nameless, unimaginable silent form, or phantom, to which the hand belonged, seemed closely seated by my bedside. For what seemed like ages piled on ages, I lay there frozen with the most awful fears, not daring to drag away my hand, yet ever thinking that if I could but stir it 1 single inch, the horrid spell would be broken." End quote. And so first of all, it's just like so characteristic of Ishmael to describe the sensation of Quake's arm over him with this incredible anecdote and this incredible digression from childhood. But that dream state, that like sleep paralysis, that middle of the night hallucination, that sensation of some unearthly, inhuman presence in the room, is the kind of feeling and register that Moby Dick captures so well and pervades the whole book. Another example of Ishmael creating this sense of otherworldliness, of spookiness, of hallucinatory mystery. In chapter 96, the Tryworks. He describes what the ship looks like as they fire up these pots for consuming the whale materials. He says, quote, "Here lounged the watch, when not otherwise employed, looking into the red heat of the fire, till their eyes felt scorched in their heads. Their tawny features, now all begrimed with smoke and sweat, their matted beards, and the contrasting barbaric brilliancy of their teeth, all these were strangely revealed in the capricious emblazonings of the works, as they narrated to each other their unholy adventures, their tales of terror told in words of mirth, as their uncivilized laughter forked upwards out of them like the flames from the furnace, as to and fro in their front the harpooners wildly gesticulated with their huge pronged forks and dippers, as the wind howled on, and the sea leaped, and the ship groaned and dived, and yet steadfastly shot her red hell further and further into the blackness of the sea and the night, and scornfully champed the white bone in her mouth, and viciously spat round her on all sides. Then the rushing Pequod, freighted with savages, and laden with fire, and burning a corpse, and plunging into the blackness of darkness, seemed the material counterpart of her monomaniacal commander's soul." End quote. The ultimate distortion in Moby Dick, the ultimate lens, is the distortion of trauma. Captain Ahab gets almost killed by a whale, and his whole world is shaken. His whole consciousness and his mind is unsettled because of that experience. Similarly, Pip, who is a little black boy who works on the ship, has a similar experience. He also falls into the water, and he goes mad. And late in the book, as they're already hunting the white whale, they're in this like the final chapters of Moby Dick, really rushing towards the climax, Ahab and Pip, they form a friendship, a bond, which is incredible. These two mad characters. Ahab sort of feels a tremendous amount of compassion for Pip. And of course, we all have traumas, right? That's part of what makes Moby Dick feel so necessary, so urgent, so universal. We all in life, experience trauma. In high school, I threw myself very, very wholeheartedly into the sport of wrestling. And it stayed with me my whole life. I did it in college, and after college I started coaching. And more recently, in recent years, I've been forced to grapple with a decision. Do I keep at it? Do I keep competing? It's a huge, huge, huge time commitment to compete because, first of all, any tournament takes a full day of time. And it's one thing when I'm coaching where I can, bring a book or whatever, but if I'm competing, I can't bring a book. I can't really just be productive all the down. There's so much downtime. Plus there's travel time. And the training is really the real cost because so much training has to go into it. I have to be in such good shape for it to even make any sense for me to compete. And it's also risky. I have a family now. I have 2 kids. My front 2 teeth are fake. They got knocked out in a wrestling match. Injuries happen. And that time and the risk associated with it, it's been this internal struggle as I've had to let that part of me go. And it's been really hard. Right at the end of Moby Dick, there's a scene, a chapter called the Symphony. This is chapter 132, page 591. So this is really right at the end. This is right before the climax. And Ahab, they're close. They're right on the tail of Moby Dick. And Ahab is looking out at sea. It's obviously some downtime. They're not actively chasing. And he's crying. He drops a tear. And Starbuck, who's the first mate and who has always been an adversary, a nemesis to Ahab in a way, because at one point he considers killing Ahab, committing total mutiny to try to abort this ridiculous mission to chase Moby Dick. And Starbuck sees Ahab, and he sees him crying. Ahab is addressing Starbuck. Just reading the end part. Quote, I feel deadly faint, bowed and humped, as though I were Adam, staggering beneath the piled centuries since paradise. God, 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 crack my heart, stave my brain, mockery, mockery, bitter, biting mockery of gray hairs. Have I lived enough joy to wear ye, and seem and feel thus intolerably old? Close, stand close to me, Starbuck. Let me look into a human eye. It is better than to gaze into sea or sky, better than to gaze upon God. By the green land, by the bright hearthstone. This is the magic glass, man. I see my wife and my child in thine eye. Starbuck responds, Oh, my captain, noble soul, grand old heart, after all, why should anyone give chase to that hated fish? Away with me. Let us fly these deadly waters. Let us home. Wife and child too are Starbuck's, wife and child of his brotherly, sisterly, playfellow youth, even as thine, sir, are the wife and child of thy loving, longing, paternal old age. Away, let us away this instant, let me alter the course. How cheerily, how hilariously, O my captain, would we bowl on our way to see old Nantucket again. I think, sir, they have some such mild, blue days even as this in Nantucket. Ahab, they have. I have seen them, summer days in the morning. About this time, yes, it is his new nap now. The boy vivaciously wakes, sits up in bed, and his mother tells him of me, of cannibal old me, how I am abroad upon the deep, but will yet come back to dance him again. Starbuck. 'Tis my Mary herself. She promised that my boy every morning should be carried to the hill to catch the first glimpse of her father's sail. Yes, no more. It is done. We head for Nantucket. Come, my captain, study out the course, and let us away. See, the boy's face from the window, the boy's hand on the hill. But Ahab's glance was averted. Like a blighted fruit tree he shook and cast his last cindered apple to the soil. And now Ahab reflects, and one of the most amazing things about this character of Ahab is that he has so much insight. Quote, what is it? What nameless, inscrutable, unearthly thing is it? What cozening, hidden lord and master, and cruel, remorseless emperor commands me, that against all natural lovings and longings I so keep pushing and crowding and jamming myself on all the time, recklessly making me ready to do what in my own proper natural heart I durst not so much as dare. Is Ahab? Is it I, God, or who, that lifts this arm? End quote. And Ahab goes on, and of course they continue to hunt the whale. And so that's just an example of a kind of internal struggle that I can relate with. And I think part of what makes the book so universal and so famous is that a lot of people can relate to that internal struggle, this idea of the white whale that we chase, and what is the cost of that chase. Thanks for watching.